Live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, it's time for the Exit Exchange, brought to you by XPX Atlanta, dedicated to changing the trajectory of exit planning services in the Southeast. Now, here's your host.
Welcome back to the Exit Exchange, folks. I'm John Ray, and this is going to be a great show. I've been looking forward to welcoming Gerardo Kerik to the show. He's going to talk a bit about AI and its business impact on us as advisors to companies that are in the exit process and just the clients that we deal with. And Gerardo made a presentation on this topic to the chapter here several weeks ago. So it's your lucky day if you missed that lunch, as frankly I did. Here's your chance to catch up on what Gerardo had to share. But before we get to him and his insights, I just want to remind you that the XPX Atlanta chapter of the Exit Exchange is all about serving family and privately held businesses through collaboration. We believe strongly that these companies need a high-quality network of advisors and service providers that do collaborate and place the client's interest at the center of all we do. If you're looking for an organization like that to be a part of, to learn from, and to grow from, go to xpxatlanta.org. That's xpxatlanta.org. Check it out and come join us. I think you'll be glad you did. And now I want to welcome Gerardo Kerik. Gerardo is a WSI consultant. Gerardo, welcome.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for having me here in the show.
Yeah, I'm delighted to have you. Let's talk about you first, and maybe you can give an introduction to yourself and your work. How are you serving folks out there?
Of course, and I appreciate that opportunity. So first of all, I would like to say that I come from the client side, right? So I spent over 20 years working in corporate America for companies like Time Warner, like Disney, etc. And 8 years ago, I decided to bet on myself and join WSI, which is a global group of independent consultants, and started my own business. And I serve the lower middle market community in Atlanta. When we started, most of what we were doing was digital transformation consulting on the areas of sales and marketing. In the last couple of years, most of that business has become artificial intelligence consulting, because artificial intelligence has now become the next frontier of digital transformation. Mm-hmm. And very quickly, even though we started with sales and marketing, we've actually expanded to artificial intelligence consulting in all functional areas, because it's almost like a change management initiative. Once you start working with artificial intelligence, really, it can benefit any areas of your business.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about what we think we know about AI. I think we were talking about this before we came on, that I think all of us think we know what AI is, but maybe there's some myths about it that we need to dispel, and maybe we need to get our definitions correct.
Sure. That's a great first question. First of all, AI is changing constantly, right? So it's important to keep up to date with AI, because it's really moving at a speed that we haven't seen before. AI has been in the market for over 20 years, but it was available to large organizations because it required a very strong computing power and very large sets of data for organizations to really use it. And probably we all have been in touch with AI in some way, shape, or form. If you're using Google Maps and it's taking you to a place, if Netflix is suggesting what next video to watch, if Amazon is predicting what should be your next purchase, you've been impacted by AI. So that it's been in the market for a while. Now in 2017, something changed. There was a paper published by some Google researchers that really opened up the imagination and actually created a race to developing what we today know as AI, which is really the advent of large language models. And a large language model mainly means AI that you can communicate with plain language. In our case, it's English, but you can do it in Chinese, in Spanish, or in any other language. And that large language model concept really transformed the opportunity for AI, because now you don't have to be a scientist or a coder to be able to interact with the tool. You just need to be able to prompt correctly. And that has created a huge opportunity. So that research paper happened in 2017, captured the imagination of Silicon Valley. It created a race similar to the nuclear race that happened with Oppenheimer, if you've seen the movie, which concluded in 2022 when OpenAI launched ChatGPT. And the world changed. Since OpenAI launched ChatGPT, it took it 5 days to reach 1 million users, which was the fastest technology adoption in the history of humankind, and then 2 months to reach 100 million users. So it was 9 times faster than the previous record holder in terms of the adoption. So it's been really an explosion since then, and there's many different players playing in that field.
Yeah, to your point there, it's interesting. I don't want to go down a bunny trail on this, but it's interesting that here are Google researchers that are putting this paper out that really got the ball rolling, shall we say. But Google was not the first adopter.
No, it's not that it wasn't the first adopter. Google has done a fantastic job with AI, and you have Gemini, which is involved in all of the Google suite of products, and they have the Google AI Studio, which is launching some fantastic tools beyond just chatbots. What happened is that it's this straddle, right? Because Google is trying to launch AI in a way that still defends their core business, which is advertising, right? While OpenAI was a not-for-profit looking into developing the best technology. So
that's the difference.
That's the difference. But right now you have very strong players with Google, with OpenAI, obviously with ChatGPT, Microsoft, which is an investor in OpenAI, and they're using some of those technologies for Copilot, which is their AI infused version into all of Microsoft 365. And then you have players like DeepSeek, Anthropic, with a fantastic tool called Claude. There's a number of tools, general tools and specialized tools. So it's really popping up everywhere.
Yeah, I want to get into that, where advisors should be spending their time and resources on some of these tools. But let's just talk about maybe where you start with all this. And I think most of our listeners have been on ChatGPT and have used it out of curiosity, if nothing else. And others have done a deep dive into either ChatGPT or some of these other models. But where do you start, and how do you take it to a level that's helpful in your business?
Yes, and that's an excellent question. I would say, obviously, you need to start by experimenting with these tools. The first point is not to be afraid of them and start playing with these tools. And I always recommend play with 2 or 3. Actually, in our trainings, we ask people to have 3 of these models open at the same time. Normally, we recommend Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude. And we ask them to use the same prompt in each of them and see the differences. Because you will find that some of these tools respond better or slightly different in a way that you prefer to what you're trying to do. So the first thing to do is to start experimenting, so you know how to use these tools. But very quickly, the next step is to think about in which use cases you could use these tools to make your life better, to make your job faster, to get a better result. A very natural starting point is for anything that is related to text. So a lot of people are using it for writing emails, for improving, polishing their emails, maybe for writing some simple documents. So that's a great starting point. And you can certainly use it for that. But very quickly, if you start building that muscle, you can then start using it into more specific use cases that can actually make your business more efficient. I'm going to give you an example, right?
Yeah.
We all have to attend calls and meetings, right? And if the business of our listeners is like mine, then you have to process those calls. Either you're taking notes and you're having to update that into your CRM, right?
Right.
Or maybe you have to send a follow-up email to the person you met with. Or maybe you're taking those notes and you're writing a brief for your team to put out a quote for that client. Natural use cases, right? In my case, that process could take me a couple of hours if depending on what is it that I'm doing. A very common use case that I recommend is get a meeting transcriber. There's a number of them. I use Fireflies, but there's Otters, there's Fathom, there's a number of them. And what these transcribers do is they attend your meeting, and probably you've seen them.
Yes, of course.
The calls.
Yeah.
And they're transcribing the call. What happens then is you can use that transcript and sync it to your CRM. So you have the updated notes. You don't have to actually do the notes manually. But you can use that transcript to feed it into a custom GPT that you've built. And we can talk about that. You can build a custom GPT that process that transcript. And you can give it an instruction and say, send a thank you email with the agreed next steps. Or use this transcript to create an internal brief for project quote. And the tool will do that. And that's where I am seeing with my clients tremendous savings of time. So it's a long answer to your question, but my advice is to find those use cases that are currently taking you a lot of time, that identify those opportunities where you're not actually adding value through your thinking, but it's actually moving content around and reformatting it.
Right.
And think how you can use these tools to help you save time on those processes.
So here's what I hear you saying, that this is not really about a tool that is your thinking partner, for lack of a better term, that this is a tool to help your process.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in this case. I'm giving you an example of how advisors can use it.
Okay.
Oh, the tool can be a thinking pattern. These tools, so when ChatGPT 3.5 came to market, they made it take the bar exam. And it scored in the 10th percentile. So it didn't score really well. It passed, but it was on the 10th percentile. 3 months later, when ChatGPT 4 was launched, it scored in the 90th percentile.
Oh, wow. That's a difference.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Right now, it's estimated that it has 155 IQ, which is the IQ that Einstein had. So those are very intelligent tools. So you have to treat them as very intelligent assistants.
Okay.
Right? And yes, and right now, there are some of these models that can actually do deep research. So both Gemini and OpenAI have launched the 1.0 models and the 3.0 models that can do deep research. And deep research means you can actually instruct it to, let's say, research an industry. Let's say you are investigating for a client, and you're going to have to write a paper on the pros and cons of entering a certain vertical. You can instruct those deep research tools to actually do that. And they have deep reasoning. You can actually see them. What deep reasoning means is they start the process, they identify flaws, they go back and correct, and then they continue. And you can actually see the thinking happening. And within 15 minutes, you have a paper that could have taken you a couple of days to put together.
Wow.
So yes, you can use them that way. But since I don't know what's the level of AI usage of the listeners. That's what I'm saying. If you're starting, start with those use cases.
Start with process.
Start with process, with
And
simple
then-
use
and-
cases.
yeah.
And then once you are more familiar with the capabilities of the tools, then you can move forward to more advanced implementations.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Gerardo Kerik is with us, folks. Gerardo is a WSI consultant and expert in AI and AI adoption. So, Gerardo, I want to get to the thinking piece of this in a second, but what's the low-hanging fruit when it comes to process improvement, do you think, for most advisors, service providers in their business? What do you think some of those, you mentioned email, and I would think just whatever you've got, letters, whatever you've got to write in general.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned transcribing meetings
Mm-hmm.
and getting that into your CRM. What are some other pieces of low-hanging fruit that advisors ought to look at?
Yeah. So we see a lot of opportunity in analyzing large pieces of research. So sometimes as advisors, we're getting from our clients probably research decks and spreadsheets and balance sheets and actually a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these tools can help us get to some very specific insights very quickly. So instead of spending 2 or 3 hours going through all of these documents, we can actually find some key pieces of information straight away. It will depend which tools that you use, right? So that's where selecting the right tool, it's important. In some cases, you can do that through the use of ChatGPT Advanced. So you can actually use I recommend everybody to use the Plus version. It costs $20 a month, but you get way more out of the tool. You can actually create projects, you can create custom GPTs, and you can do way more things with that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's other tools like the Google AI Studio, where you can create, again, projects where you're uploading all of these pieces of research, and it's creating summaries and finding connections between these pieces of research that it would take you a good amount of time
Right.
to find. So I think going through larger research, it's finding efficiencies, it's an important benefit, and I would imagine some of our advisors would find that useful. Also, putting together larger documents, right? So if you have templated documents like proposals or contracts or any of that kind,
Mm-hmm.
and you know that you have to change those specifically to the clients you're talking to, you could use those templates. You can train the tool to use those templated formats and feed it the information, the transcripts from the conversations, the briefs that you've created from your clients, and put together those documents in a much faster way.
Wow. So I want to hit the break just a second and get to something that I think a lot of advisors have concerns about, particularly those, and I think that's true for most of us, that have clients where confidentiality is part of our scope, right? Let's talk about the privacy issues and the confidentiality issues of using client information in some of these tools.
Yeah,
Because these tools are learning off the information that we put in, correct?
that's correct.
Okay, so let's talk about just preserving client confidentiality.
So that should be a key concern. There's a few ways of solving that. Definitely, I do not recommend including confidential information on any of the ChatGPT products, even if you're using the Plus, which is the paid version. Do not include credit card numbers, social security numbers, things like that, okay? Because it's encrypted and you lose control of it. Now, if you're using it through, let's say, your Microsoft 365 enterprise account, and you're using Copilot, that has the same security encryption than everything else that you're doing through Microsoft. So if you're holding that information in your servers, you can use Copilot and it would have the same security measures. The same with Google. If you are on G Suite Enterprise and you're using Gemini, it will have the same security than the rest of their offering. Okay? So you have to be very careful. If you're not using any of those, then the way we solve that is through, when we work with clients and implement these solutions for them, is we solve it through either self-hosted licenses and through API connections. So there's an API that it's pulling that information into the GPT for processing, but it's not pulling it out to the world. Let's put it, pushing it out to the world. There's ways of solving it, but definitely if you don't have any of that set up, be careful with the information you put into these tools, for sure.
Yeah, because you could inadvertently release someone's private data, right? Their financial results, their balance sheet information, any number of things, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You can always use these tools by creating like a phantom. So not using the real company names, for example.
Okay.
So if you do that, that's a way of protecting and still getting the benefits of it. So that's a way of doing it as well. But you have to be conscious of doing it that way.
Yeah. Gerardo Kerik is with us, folks. He is a WSI consultant, and as you're hearing, he's got quite a lot to offer here on AI and AI use cases. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges that advisors run into when it comes to implementing and utilizing correctly AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we found through experience a number of challenges in implementing. There's a high percentage of AI failure in implementation, right? It has to do with unrealistic expectations of what the tool can do, right? So it's important to understand what the tool can do and what it can't. And we always say that we have to look at the tool as in the same way you are looking at somebody you're hiring for your team, right? If you hire somebody new for your team, are you training that person correctly? Are you giving them the correct narrow scope of what their job is? Are you paying attention to them and giving them feedback on how they're doing their job? So that's very important. It's the same with AI. It's just not going to work on its own. You need a human in the loop. Okay? That's one factor. Another factor is inadequate data. Garbage in, garbage out, that type of thing. So if you're not training the tool with the right set of data, it's not going to give you the right responses. Okay? Number 3 is learning how to prompt. And by the way, we have an ebook that is for free that gives you great prompts to start your AI journey. And we'll have to figure out what's the best way of offering it to your audience. But learning how to prompt is important. The concept of prompt engineering is there. The most exciting engineering language right now is plain English. If you learn how to prompt correctly, you're going to get better results faster. A fourth factor is lack of training. Sometimes you're thinking people are using AI in our teams, and we even pay for their premium accounts, but we haven't trained them. And I always compare it to, and probably some of our listeners will remember this, in the 90s when Lotus 123 and Microsoft Excel came to market, financial teams and accounting teams used to do everything on ledgers.
Yes.
And imagine a company buying a Lotus 123 license for all of their accounting team and not training them on how to use it and expecting them to now do everything else that they used to do now on Lotus 123. It wouldn't be realistic. You have to give people the right training so they can take advantage of these tools, right? So lack of training is another important factor. And then, just because you touched on data privacy, having AI policies. Obviously, a lot of our listeners are probably small businesses or solopreneurs, so that's not needed. But for a slightly larger organization, you need to have an idea of what are your AI policies. You have to set up the right guardrails so you know what to input into the tools, what not to input into the tools, how to treat your customers' data. All of that has to be black and white.
Are you able to set up the tool to protect yourself in that regard, to prevent, let's say, an employee from uploading sensitive information, or has it gotten to is that even on the radar screen in terms of capability right now?
If you created a custom tool, you could do that, but not with the open market.
Okay. So we're coming down to the close here, Gerardo, unfortunately, because I've got a ton of more questions to ask you. And your presentation, by the way, was much more robust than what we're talking about here. So, folks, if you missed it, you need to either get in touch with Gerardo or certainly make sure you come to these lunches, right?
Yeah. And I'm happy to share my slides. So if anybody that is listening to this wants to look at my slides, just send me an email.
Well, we'll have your contact information in the show notes for sure. But let's just talk about where the development's coming, what this is going to look like 3 to 5 years from now. And for those that maybe think they're too late, quote unquote, I'm very curious about what the state of adoption is. It's one thing to have a ChatGPT account. You talked about how rapidly those have grown. It's another thing to actually be using it in a robust manner. And so I'm curious about both of those questions.
So the AI market was valued at $284 million last year, and it's projected to be valued at $2 trillion by 2030 in 5 years. And its projected output by 2030 is projected at 15.7 trillion, which is more than the combined output of India and China. So just to give you an idea, the impact it's going to have on business, or the projected impact. In fact, whoever attended the January luncheon by the Federal Trade Commission, the section where I think his name is David, talked about how they are projecting productivity going forward. And he had 3 hypotheses in terms of the labor markets. And one of those hypotheses was on the impact of AI on productivity. So we're seeing it, it's coming, it's to jump on the bandwagon. What we're seeing is that the next frontier with AI is what is called agentic AI and general intelligence AI. And agentic AI is AI agents that can manage other AI tools and do things for you. So they can actually pay suppliers, create invoices. You give them a role like you would give an employee. And they can take care of, make decisions and touch base with you when they have a doubt. And that is coming very soon. That is expected to come in 2025. And within the next 3 years, I was listening to an interview yesterday. There are expectations that general AI is going to be in the market. And what that means is that AI will be able to do anything that a human can do behind a computer. So some of these companies like OpenAI are thinking of creating, for example, $20,000 a month subscriptions for enterprise. That's $240,000 a year for an AI agent that could replace probably 5 engineers.
Wow.
And that it's working 24 hours and does not receive benefits. And you see what I'm saying?
Never tires out.
Never tires out. So they're starting to come with these solutions where instead of hiring someone, you can actually hire it from, you hire an agent from an OpenAI or Google or whoever the provider is going to be, and they can do what a lot of these white collar employees can do. Yeah, that's what a lot of the predictions are going into.
Okay. Let's talk about adoption.
Yeah.
And what that looks like. Because I can imagine there are a lot of folks that were in that room and in our chapter and just advisors in general that look at this and think, wow, I'm hearing all this stuff, I'm behind.
Yeah.
How do you see the adoption there?
I would say the majority of people are using the tools for content writing.
Mm-hmm.
We see a lot of adoption by marketing teams especially because of the content writing. A lot of teams are using it for writing blogs and social media posts and emails and things like that.
Sure.
So there is a lot of adoption of the chatbots that way. I think there's very minimal adoption in creating solutions that affect workflows. So to give you an example, John, in our business, we write proposals for clients.
Sure.
And for us to write a proposal could take 4 or 5 hours. But we've automated that workflow, and it takes us probably half an hour now to do. We've reduced that process from 4 to 5 hours to 30 minutes. And the way we've done that is just by looking at the process and identifying which areas we could actually do with AI. So if I'm meeting with you, I'm transcribing, we talked about that, I'm transcribing that call. After that call is done, that transcript is uploaded into an AI tool that we've built, that we've built it and we've trained it with our consulting models, with our templates, with our contracts, with our pricing, with everything. And it takes the transcript. It asks a few questions about the client. We have a structured process of 10 questions that it takes me 10 minutes to complete. And then uses that information to put together a proposal. And that proposal is probably 90% there. And it sends me the proposal, it sends me a PowerPoint to present, it sends me a document to sign. And I just have to look at it and just correct a few things because I'm the human in the loop. So I'm the one that has the gut feeling of what works and what doesn't. And then I have that ready. So that type of adoption, John, I'm not seeing it enough. And that's where the big opportunity is for businesses. Because what happens when you can actually do that, then you can actually use your, let's say we have a business with a sales team, right? And you want your sales team to be visiting more and more clients. So if you can actually reduce the amount of time they're actually working on the proposals and use that time not to save on their salaries, but to actually get them to knock on more doors.
Right.
That's growth.
Wow. A lot to think about, folks, from Gerardo Kerik. Gerardo, this has been fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I cannot imagine at all that there aren't some folks that wouldn't want to be in touch, learn more, maybe engage you in terms of this work. So let's tell them how they can find you.
Sure. The easiest way to do that, it's sending me an email, GKERIK at wsidigitalboost.com. Or look out for me on LinkedIn and send me a message, Gerardo Kerik, Kerik, and we can take it from there.
Gerardo Kerik, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your great work.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
And your support of XPX, for that matter.
I have to say, XPX has been wonderful. If any of our listeners are not XPX members, you should seriously consider joining XPX. It's a great community of advisors that have the best interest of their clients at heart. It's not a referral network just for the sake of it. It's really people that care about their clients and are trying to find for them the best advisors to solve their problems. It's a great community. Couldn't recommend it more.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I underline that. High character folks, for sure. Yeah. Gerardo, thanks again.
Thank you.
Hey, folks, just a quick reminder that the Exit Exchange is indeed brought to you by XPX Atlanta. And as you've heard, XPX Atlanta delivers a collaborative-based networking exchange, offers a broad representation of exit planning competencies, and a bridge spanning preparation, value building, value transfer, and business owners' life legacy. Those values that our advisors and members live by are putting the client first, thinking long term, always be learning. Those are just a few. If that's the kind of organization that you're interested in joining, checking out at least, go to xpxatlanta.org to learn more, to find out about coming events, and we'd love to have you. So check us out. For my guest, Gerardo Kerik, I'm John Ray. Join us next time on the Exit Exchange.